So if you own a Mosin Nagant, you've probably noticed that, right when you get it, that the trigger is pretty stiff, has a pretty long pull. This is even cocked, and it takes quite a bit of force. Once you actually cock it back, see it has a little bit of slop in the trigger, and it takes quite a bit of force. It has quite a long pull to actually release the bolt firing pin. So basically what I did is I kind of made a two-stage trigger for mine, which does a couple things. It takes off a little bit of the spring force and makes the trigger a little easier to pull, makes it a little bit more sensitive, but it's a lot more predictable. You can tell where it's going to fire. So in this video I'm going to show you how to do that, all for about $5. So getting started, this is basically what you'll need. You don't need exactly the same thing, but what you're going to need is, kind of hard to see down in there, get it up here in the light, your spring, that type of spring. You can find these type of springs on a lot of different things. The trick is you need to find something that's narrow enough in width and also has big enough diameter for your pin, your trigger pin right there, to go through. So I went to the store thinking of a couple different things, women's hair clips and things like that, and then just looking around, my wife found these and they seem to be about right. You also need a small washer to actually space out the firing pin spring a little bit. And let me see here. You actually have to file off one of the edges a little bit flat, just because later when I show you when you install it, it has to be flat up against this edge right here, because your magazine actually goes down in that area, so you have to file part of the washer off flat. So once you actually get your spring out of your clip, or whatever you choose to use, I've seen some stapler removers and things like that that have these springs, and like I said, women's hair clips, if you can find the right one, they'll cost roughly around $5, $2, pretty cheap. You're going to end up with something like this. Now I kind of had to bend mine a little bit to get to fit the way I needed it, so you'll probably have to mess around with yours too just to get it to fit, but here in a second I'll show you what it looks like installed and you can get a better idea of what I'm talking about. And like I said, the only reason for this spring is to kind of make like a two-stage trigger, because when you actually put that washer to space out the spring, you get extra slack in the trigger, and you want to eliminate that. So the spring actually helps push the trigger forward. I'll show you here in a second. So what I've gone ahead and done here is I've actually taken out the bolt that holds on the spring, and what you want to do, don't really need to remove that, but that's what it looks like. So the idea is, if you actually start looking at this, is that your trigger rides on the inside of the spring. There's actually some rub marks on there. Your trigger rides on the inside of there. So if you can space this out a little bit, if you can space it up a little bit away from the trigger, you're actually going to release some of the tension. So that's when this washer comes in. So you don't need something too thick. I didn't actually measure this one, but you can see there, it's a pretty thin washer. I went for one of the thinnest ones I could find. I think it's about like 1/4 inch inner diameter. Not too big, just really small. So what that's going to do is it's going to go on here, and you'll install your spring back on, and that will space your spring out. So now you can see that right down in there, you see the silver washer underneath the spring. and that's actually spacing the spring out away from the trigger a little bit. So you may be asking yourself, well, you know, why not just stop there? Well, here's the problem. You still have play in the trigger like we did before, and it gets even worse once you actually cock it. But you can see now the trigger requires a lot less force to activate. Feels a lot more predictable. I've actually already shot the gun like this a bunch, so I can tell you it does shoot well like this, but more recently I wanted to fix some of the slop. So that's where the spring comes in next. So here we go. Here's the finished product. I have the spring spacer installed. You can see right there. And then now I have the kind of two-stage spring trigger here on the back. All that right there is not in the all that force right there is not from this trigger spring. That's actually from that spring I added on the back here. So what that's doing is this is taking up some of the slack. So in a sense you're kind of making a two-stage trigger. Sorry, kind of hard to do this one hand, but pull off the slack and it fires. Again, I've already actually shot with my rifle like this, and I've found that it's made the gun a lot easier to shoot. You definitely don't have to pull the trigger as far, and there's a lot less force on the trigger when you're shooting, and it just makes the rifle a lot more predictable, and you know exactly when it's going to go off. It just really helps make things a lot more accurate. Check it out, and for a $5 mod, can't beat it.